Thank you. So good afternoon. So first of all, this is a joint work with some colleagues from the University of Bolzano, from the Faculty of Science and Technology, and from the Fraunhofer Italia Research Center. Instead, I'm from the Faculty of Computer Science, so I hope I will use the right terminology during this presentation. So this work is about, indeed, promoting collaborative construction process management by means of a normalized workload approach. So first of all, let me give you some context. So what we are considering. Here we are focusing on small and medium enterprises. And what we notice from the reality, from the companies that are involved in a research project that we are carrying on, is that these companies have limited margins. And so for this reason, they are also not very much willing to use these resources into planning and into understanding knowledge management theory and into possibly investing in IT tools. So these conditions leads to, as a consequence, usually in most of the cases, in a coarse planning and management, and in difficulties in identifying and focusing on those that are the value-adding tasks. So, and in most of the projects, what they experience is that they experience budget overrun, which are often identified too late in order to apply effective countermeasures. But as you know better than me, there are lean approaches that have been indeed introduced in order to improve this situation, to support this situation. And the lean approaches that I will mention in this presentation are the last planner system, the tact planning together with the last planner system, and the location-based management system. So last planner system, again, as you know much better than me, is based on several principles. Among these principles, there is planning at different level of details. So the planning becomes more detailed as the work to be performed is about to be performed. It creates a network of commitment between the main actors that are involved in the process by means of the collaborative planning. It measures schedule reliability by means of the PPC value. And it it focuses on a continuous improvement by means of the feedback mechanism. However, in our opinion, there is still limited support for quantitative construction progress measurement. And this, what I mean with this will become more clear later on in the presentation. Then there were approaches proposed in the literature about tactile planning and last planner system, where tactile planning has been used as a support to last planner system to standardize batches in order to achieve continuous workflow. And the aim of this approach is to achieve disruption-free handovers between the different trades. However, tact planning has been mainly applicable to repetitive construction work, repetitive construction processes, and is difficult. It might be difficult to identify what are the tact area for a specific tact time. Then we have the location-based management system, which interestingly introduces also and focuses very much on the concept of location. And the idea is, and the aim is to reduce the movement of resources in the space and to achieve a continuous workflow. However, it has a limited focus on the social aspect, which created the network of commitment and in learning from process feedback. So what we would like to have is to take the advantage of these approaches by combining them. So to take the commitment network, the schedule reliability measure, and the learning from feedback that is proposed from the last planner system, but we also would like to have a location-based perspective into the picture. So additionally to this, what we would like to have is to introduce a quantitative construction progress measurement, which is then applicable both to repetitive and non-repetitive projects. So our proposal in order to do this is to introduce this normalized workload approach, which is then specific for task and location. So basically the approach is the following. For each, there is a first phase where for each task and location, what we do, we estimate what is the production rate and the required number of workers in order to perform that task in that specific location. And then as a second step, we normalize this for a specific time interval. So the concept that we introduced is called then pitch. And I will explain this by means of this example. So in this example, the pitch is saying that for the task parquet laying in the floor number 1 with a crew size of 2 people, the quantity of work that can be achieved is of 20 square meters in 1 working day. So then, more generally, the pitch defines the quantity of work for a task I in a specific location J for a crew size K, normalized to a certain time interval, right? And this is the quantitative, how we quantitatively define the progress that can be achieved on the construction site and how we measure it. So then how is this concept used into process management? So this is part of, say, a more complex process which involves 3 phases. The first one is collaborative process modeling. The second one is rolling short-term scheduling based on the model that is defined. And finally, a real-time progress monitoring with feedback loops. And as you can see in this picture, these 3 phases that I will explain now in more details are very much interconnected one another. So during the collaborative process modeling, what is happening is that the requirement for the execution process are collaboratively defined by the main actors that are involved in the construction process. And this means that locations are defined, tasks are defined, and the pitch that I defined, that I explained later on, is also defined, together with resources and dependencies between the different tasks in the different locations. So as you can notice then, the pitch, which is then defined at the modeling time, becomes part of the commitment. So it is part of this network of commitment that is then created. Then, as a second phase, we have the rolling short-term schedule, where basically, based on the pitch that has been defined in the previous steps, which gives estimation of the duration for the different tasks in the different location, a schedule is defined. And then this schedule is also based on information that are coming from the construction site. So it is based on updated information. And the aim is to eventually come to generate this schedule in an automatic way, and possibly to generate more than one, so that the last planner can then, or the project manager can then decide which one he likes more and which one to apply. So the last step is indeed the real-time monitoring, where the progress on site is quantitatively measured based on the referring to the pitch that is being defined in the modeling part. And indeed, as I said, so this measure of the progress on site is then also compared to the pitch that has been estimated. So that if the estimation was very much wrong, then the people can decide to update the pitch that has been defined in the model to give, let's say, more reliable say, schedule, and to use this pitch in order to predict what will be the budget at completion or the time to completion. And this will then is part of a loop. So the pitch that is measured on site becomes part of the modeling, which is then affecting the schedule and so on. So overall, this gives, in our view, a more reliable approach. So this is a picture from the last planner system. I think I don't have to explain this, but what our approach does, we basically foresee a collaborative pitch-based model where the resources are taken into account already at this time and becomes part of the network, and we have a systematic way to take into consideration what has been performed on site, which then affects also the modeling process. This the pitch-based approach has been tested in some real construction projects, and we recently started a new project, a new research project, which is called Cockpit, which stands for Collaborative Construction Process Management. And the idea and the main aim of this project is to define methodologies and IT tools that can support construction process execution, as I said at the beginning, mainly focusing on small and medium enterprises. So our research methodologies, so first we start with some with initial phases related to requirement analysis and to literature investigation. So we also developed surveys to understand what are the software that the companies are using, what are the knowledge they have about the project management, and so on. And then we analyze together with the company what are the requirements and what are the, feedback and needs that they have. And then we are developing, right now in the development phase, of some IT supporting tools, and the approach that we are using is known as agile development. Here the idea is that we start with some demonstrator or some prototype, which implements some of the functionalities and some of the requirements that are identified with the company. The demonstrator need not to be perfect in the first time, because the idea is to then show to the companies what how IT tool can support them in order to get quickly feedback and ideas for new features to be implemented and so on. So concerning the automation of the scheduling, what we are using is what in computer science is known as constraint satisfaction solvers. So basically what we do, we start from a model which for the time being, for convenience, is defined using Microsoft Excel, because companies are most of the time very much comfortable with Microsoft Excel. So here we have a model where some requirements are specified. So for instance, tasks are listed, dependencies between the different tasks, duration in terms of pitch is defined, and so on and so forth. This model expressed as an Excel is then translated into a set of constraints. And the idea is to produce then a schedule which basically translate into automatically generate start and end dates for the task in the different locations. And this schedule must satisfy all the constraints that are coming from the model. And this is done by applying some very well and general techniques. Then the schedule that is automatically generated is visualized again with Excel. And the additional reason here for visualizing it in Excel is that companies are actually able to annotate this Excel by specifying what has been performed on site at a certain time. So this sheet is then used also for monitoring. And the information coming from which task is being performed where is then taken back into the loop. So this becomes then again constraint, and possibly a new schedule taking into account what has actually been performed already on site can then be generated. And this concludes my presentation. So thank you very much for the attention. And if you want to know more about the project, this is the webpage. Thank you very much.